José Mourinho is back. And suddenly, Europe has a reason to feel uncomfortable again, because Real Madrid are no longer calling him during a moment of dominance. They are calling him while everything is starting to fall apart. Barcelona have taken back control of Spain. The Champions League ended in humiliation. The Bernabeu has started turning against its own stars. And beneath all the talent, all the money, and all the global attention, something inside this team no longer feels stable. This was supposed to become the most terrifying squad in world football. Mbappe, Vinicius, Bellingham, Valverde, a generation built to dominate Europe for years. Instead, Madrid started looking tense, disconnected, emotional, like a team full of superstars trying to pull the club in different directions at the same time. And that is exactly why Florentino Perez has turned back to the one man who has always thrived inside chaos. The same manager who once transformed Madrid from fragile dreamers into ruthless monsters. The same man who made Barcelona hate every trip to the Bernabeu. Because if football history has taught us anything, it is this. Mourinho has always been most dangerous when the room is already burning. What makes this story so dangerous is that Real Madrid have seen this movie before. Long before Mbappe arrived, long before Bellingham became the face of a new generation, there was already another version of Madrid that looked powerful from the outside but mentally fragile underneath. A club obsessed with European glory, yet constantly collapsing when the pressure became unbearable. And then Mourinho arrived in 2010 and changed the emotional temperature of the entire institution. Suddenly, Madrid stopped looking afraid of Barcelona. That alone changed everything. Before Mourinho, Guardiola's Barcelona made Europe feel helpless. They didn't just win matches, they controlled teams psychologically. Opponents entered games already doubting themselves. But Mourinho refused to accept that hierarchy. He built a Madrid side that was aggressive, hostile, and emotionally relentless. Cristiano Ronaldo became unstoppable, attacking open space. Di Maria turned transitions into chaos. Ozil found passes before defenses could breathe. Benzema connected everything between them, and behind it all was Mourinho's obsession with intensity, sacrifice, and emotional warfare. This was not slow possession football. This was controlled destruction at full speed. Madrid reached 100 points in La Liga. They scored 121 league goals. They broke Barcelona's emotional grip over Spain. But the most important thing Mourinho gave Madrid was not tactical structure, it was belief. For the first time in years, Madrid stopped behaving like a glamorous club, chasing greatness, and started behaving like a team that expected to win wars. That psychological transformation eventually opened the road toward a new European dynasty. And now, more than a decade later, Perez is staring at another dressing room full of talent, pressure, ego, and instability, hoping the same man can perform the same miracle twice. The frightening part about Real Madrid's collapse is that it did not happen all at once. There was no single moment where the empire suddenly broke apart. The damage started quietly. Small cracks hidden underneath big names, dramatic goals, and individual brilliance. On some nights, Madrid still looked unstoppable. Mbappe exploding into open space, Vinicius destroying defenders 1 versus 1, Bellingham arriving late into the box like a second striker, Valverde covering impossible distances. But underneath those moments, the structure holding everything together was slowly weakening. The pressing no longer moved as one. The midfield kept getting stretched across enormous spaces. Defenders were constantly exposed after losing possession high up the pitch. And the deeper the season went, the more Madrid started looking like a collection of superstars solving different problems at the same time, instead of one unified team moving toward the same objective. That was the real danger, because tactical problems can still be fixed on the training ground. Psychological imbalance is much harder to control. Xabi Alonso tried to restore order. The ideas were visible immediately: faster combinations through the middle, better connections between Júnior and Mbappe, less dependence on endless attacks down the left side. There were even moments where Madrid briefly looked fresh again, more fluid, more modern, more unpredictable. But football systems only work when the biggest players fully sacrifice themselves for the structure. And inside this Madrid dressing room, sacrifice was becoming increasingly complicated. Mbappe and Vinicius both wanted freedom. Both wanted the attack built around them. Both carried enormous emotional influence inside the club. The result was a team that looked terrifying with the ball, and strangely vulnerable without it. And slowly, without fully realizing it, Real Madrid stopped feeling like an empire built on control, and started feeling like a club losing control of itself. Eventually, the pressure inside Real Madrid stopped hiding beneath the surface. The cracks became visible to everyone. First came the humiliations, a disastrous domestic cup exit that made the entire season feel unstable almost immediately. Then the Champions League collapse arrived like a public execution. Real Madrid were not supposed to fall apart that early, not with this squad, not with this much talent. But against elite opposition, every weakness Madrid had been trying to hide suddenly became impossible to ignore. The midfield looked exposed. The defensive transitions became chaotic, and emotionally, the team started reacting like a group carrying too many unresolved tensions at once. Then Barcelona delivered the final psychological blow. Losing another Clásico was painful enough. Watching Barcelona reclaim control of Spain directly at Madrid's expense was something far worse. Because this was no longer just about trophies, it was about identity. Barca looked connected, disciplined, emotionally synchronized. Madrid looked frustrated, divided, exhausted by their own internal pressure. And that was when the dressing room tension truly exploded into public view. Reports of arguments during training sessions began leaking constantly. Fan frustration turned toward Mbappé despite his goals. The Bernabeu, once disparate to welcome him as the future king of Madrid, suddenly started treating him like the symbol of everything that felt wrong. 85 goals in 2 seasons somehow became not enough. That is the brutality of Real Madrid, when expectations stop being human. At the same time, Vinicius no longer looked like the unquestioned emotional center of the team. Before Mbappé arrived, the attack revolved around him. The stadium fed off his aggression, his unpredictability, his chaos. Now the balance had changed. And once fans and media begin viewing a dressing room through the lens of factions, every substitution becomes political. Every missed pass becomes personal. Every reaction becomes evidence of a deeper war happening underneath. Real Madrid were no longer collapsing because of football alone. They were collapsing because the club had started tearing itself apart from within. That is why Mourinho's return suddenly stopped sounding nostalgic and started sounding dangerous. Florentino Perez is not bringing him back to entertain Madrid fans with memories from 2012. He is bringing him back because this club has lost something far more important than tactical balance. It has lost authority. Madrid no longer feel emotionally controlled. The dressing room has become too loud, too political, too dependent on individual personalities pulling attention toward themselves. And Mourinho has spent his entire career walking directly into environments exactly like this. He does not enter a club asking players to feel comfortable. He enters demanding hierarchy, demanding sacrifice, demanding emotional discipline. That is what makes him different from every manager Madrid have tried since his first departure. Ancelotti gave the club calm. Xabi Alonso tried to give them structure. But Mourinho gives teams something much darker and much more powerful when it works correctly. He gives them siege mentality. He turns pressure into fuel. He makes players feel like the entire football world is against them and then weaponizes that emotion. That mentality once transformed Madrid into the only side capable of emotionally confronting Guardiola's Barcelona at their peak. And now Perez is gambling that the same psychological formula can save another collapsing generation. Because tactically, this squad actually fits Mourinho far more naturally than many people realize. Mbappe is devastating in transition. Vinicius becomes lethal when defenders are forced to run backward. Valverde looks built for Mourinho football, with his aggression, intensity, and endless running power. Bellingham thrives when attacking chaos instead of carrying slow possession systems on his shoulders. Mourinho may not turn this Madrid into the prettiest team in Europe, but he could turn them into something far more frightening. A team that suffers together, a team that fights together, a team that finally remembers who controls the room again. And this is the part that should genuinely worry the rest of Europe. Because if Mourinho succeeds in stabilizing this dressing room even slightly, Real Madrid could become emotionally terrifying again. Not beautiful, not elegant, terrifying. Modern football has become obsessed with control, possession, and tactical perfection. Mourinho has never cared about making football feel comfortable. He cares about making opponents feel trapped. And this Madrid squad already contains the exact weapons needed for that kind of football. Mbappe attacking open grass is still one of the most devastating sights in world football. Vinicius becomes almost impossible to stop when matches turn chaotic and defenders lose structure. Valverde can run through entire midfields for 90 minutes without slowing down. Bellingham thrives in emotional games where intensity matters more than rhythm. Suddenly, the pieces start making uncomfortable sense together. Mourinho would not ask this team to dominate the ball endlessly. He would ask them to become compact, aggressive, direct, and emotionally ruthless. The terrifying possibility is not that Madrid become perfect. The terrifying possibility is that they become dangerous again, especially for Barcelona. Because Hansi Flick has restored belief inside Barca, they look synchronized, confident, in control of Spain once more. But Mourinho has always loved entering situations where one empire already believes it owns the future. Guardiola's Barcelona learned that lesson years ago. Mourinho turns rivalries toxic. He slows games down emotionally. He creates pressure that lingers before kickoff even begins. Every Clásico starts feeling like psychological warfare instead of football. And if he manages to fully reconnect this Madrid squad to that mentality, Europe may suddenly realize something too late. Real Madrid were never at their most frightening when they played the prettiest football. They were most frightening when they played angry. But there is another side to this story that makes the entire situation feel dangerously unstable. Mourinho might be exactly what Real Madrid need right now. He might also be the one person capable of making everything explode even faster, because history has shown the same pattern too many times to ignore. Chelsea, Manchester United, Roma. Even his first spell at Madrid eventually collapsed under the weight of emotional exhaustion. Mourinho's greatest strength has always been intensity. His greatest weakness is that intensity eventually consumes everything around it. He creates dressing rooms that feel like war zones. For 1 or 2 seasons, that mentality can make players feel unstoppable. But when results begin slipping, the same emotional pressure that once created unity starts turning toxic. And this modern Madrid dressing room is far more fragile than the one he inherited in 2010. Today's stars are not just footballers. They are global brands with massive influence, enormous fan armies, and constant media protection. Mbappé will not quietly accept becoming another piece inside someone else's system. Vinicius will not suddenly enjoy sacrificing his freedom without tension. Mourinho will demand pressing, discipline, defensive work, and emotional obedience from all of them. If one player refuses, Mourinho will confront him publicly. That has always been his method. But modern football reacts differently to conflict now. Every substitution becomes a social media war. Every tactical disagreement becomes a headline. Every moment of frustration becomes fuel for chaos. Which means this entire project is balancing on one terrifying possibility. Mourinho could rebuild the emotional identity of Real Madrid. Or he could ignite the biggest dressing room explosion European football has seen in years. Right now, nobody truly knows how this story ends. Maybe Mourinho walks back into the Bernabeu and finally restores the emotional order this club has been missing ever since its new generation of superstars arrive. Maybe he turns chaos into unity the same way he once transformed Madrid from fragile dreamers into warriors capable of staring Barcelona in the eye without fear. Or maybe modern football has changed too much. Maybe player power has become too strong. Maybe this dressing room is already too fractured, too emotional, too unstable for even Mourinho to control anymore. But that uncertainty is exactly what makes this return feel so dangerous. Because football history has always shown the same thing about José Mourinho. The more broken the environment becomes, the more dangerous he becomes inside it. And Real Madrid are walking into one of the most emotionally volatile periods in their modern history. Barcelona are rising again. Europe is watching closely. The pressure inside the Bernabeu has become unbearable. And now the club has turned back to the one manager who never tries to calm the fire down. He steps into it, which means the rest of Europe may soon discover something terrifying once again. A wounded Real Madrid under Mourinho is never just a football team. It becomes a war.